217 BC, a Roman army marches into a battle it cannot see. Above Lake Trasimene, Hannibal watches through the one eye he has left.
Hold! Let the Romans move deeper.
Some modern estimates place roughly 25,000 Romans along the lakeshore. Some modern historians estimate Hannibal's army at 50 to 55,000. Ancient sources give no total. Later tradition names the surviving elephant Surus. The marsh crossing exhausted Hannibal's army. How did one lakeside road become several battlefronts? Across the Apennines, he chose the harder road, faster and less closely guarded. African and Iberian infantry led. The Gauls struggled farther back through rising water. Polybius says 3 days and nights. Livy says 4 days and 3 nights. Both sources place his lost sight here, but neither identifies the injured eye. On dry ground, Hannibal rested his troops and gathered intelligence on Flaminius. Then he fed his army from Etruria and ravaged the countryside to force a response.
Flaminius could wait for Servilius, or let Hannibal keep stripping allied land.
Later senatorial tradition calls him reckless. The campaign gave him real reasons to move. He chose pursuit, leaving Arretium before the two consular armies could unite. By evening, the Roman column reached the northern shore of Lake Trasimene. Hannibal was no longer fleeing Flaminius. He was choosing where Flaminius would march.
Hannibal's coalition was held together by command, not by uniformity. African and Iberian infantry could hold Roman attention by standing visibly ahead. Gallic infantry supplied weight for sudden pressure across broken slopes. Balearic slingers could strike a column before heavy infantry reached it. Numidian riders harassed and turned. Heavier Gallic and Iberian cavalry could close an exit. Ancient sources never totaled this coalition. Flaminius probably commanded 2 citizen legions and 2 allied Italian wings. Velites screened the march. Roman and allied cavalry watched the flanks and carried messages. Citizen and allied infantry shared a system, not a uniform. Given space, maniples could turn marching files into a layered battle line. Raised signa linked each maniple to neighboring units and the consul's command. Rome needed time to become dangerous.
On the road, armor, shields, weapons, and spacing stretched every formation. A scutum protects a line. Carried sideways through a crowd, it also consumes space. One bend in the shore could separate the vanguard from the rear. Orders moved by voice, riders, and signa, through footsteps, animals, and metal. Flaminius knew Hannibal was ahead. He did not know the enemy's full strength or deployment. The approach narrowed first, then opened into uneven ground beneath folded hills. This was not one continuous corridor. Polybius and Livy both record morning fog. Neither gives a measurable visibility range. Numbers alone did not make a frontal attack safe. Deployed Roman maniples could make victory expensive. Servilius was approaching. At dawn, Flaminius would enter, before his army could become a battle line.
Hannibal read 4 things: the entrance, low ground, folded slopes, and the far position. African and Iberian infantry would hold the only position Rome needed to notice. Polybius and Livy agree on the trap, but divide its hidden forces differently. He could continue south, fight openly, or make the terrain divide Rome. He chose the ambush.
After dark,
African and Iberian infantry occupied the exposed front. One plausible reconstruction places slingers along the lower folds above the road. Polybius places Celts beside cavalry along the line toward the entrance. Livy instead emphasizes cavalry hidden behind low ground near the entrance. Both agree on night deployment. Neither records torches, horns, or the exact command chain. Before dawn, the visible front and hidden flanks were in position. The Roman army had halted late, with Hannibal somewhere beyond the hills. Waiting promised reinforcement. It also yielded more land and initiative to Hannibal. Pursuit was risky, but allowing Hannibal to move freely also threatened Rome's allies. What Flaminius could not see was the work already completed above him.
Before sunrise, he chose pursuit over waiting for Servilius. The Roman column moved before the light had fully strengthened. The vanguard crossed the narrow approach and found enemy infantry ahead. Fog and the curving shore hid that hesitation from the center. Behind them, the rear followed a march it had not seen change. The road was full. The hills were still silent. Most of the Roman column was inside when Hannibal finally released the trap.
Begin!
Ahead, African and Iberian infantry fixed the vanguard in place. Near the entrance, cavalry and Celts probably struck the rear before it could turn front. Front, flanks, rear, and lake now imposed 4 different directions on one marching army.
This exchange is reconstructed. The sources preserve the collision, not each individual thrust.
Slaying stones arrived before many Romans could identify the infantry descending behind them. Armor could absorb an impact. It could not preserve balance on wet ground. Helping one fallen man opened space beside 3 others. The Romans were surprised, not helpless. Local resistance began almost immediately. Two shields could rebuild the front, but only across a few paces. Where a signum remained visible, Allied infantry could still gather around it. Downhill pressure forced every Roman shield to defend height as well as direction. One pocket advanced. Beyond the fog, every neighboring pocket remained isolated. The standard rose again. The command network around it did not. Rearward pressure drove files together before the front could deploy. A cavalry threat forced one group to expose its opposite side. Three men stopped moving forward. The line around them opened. A missing signal meant no visible place to regroup. Retreat began locally, toward water, rising ground, or any space not already occupied. The army did not break odds. Separate sections failed at different times. Flaminius moved between those sections, trying to rebuild command around surviving Signa.
Hold the signum! Close on me! Brace!
Polybius says Celtic warriors killed Flaminius. He gives no named attacker.
Ducarius! Consul!
According to Livy,
Consul!
the Insubrian horseman Ducarius recognized and
Ducarius!
struck the consul.
Consul!
At the shore, mud and shallow water removed the space still left for formation.
For Rome!
Charge! Charge! Push! Kill them!
Stand fast!
Livy says the fighting lasted nearly 3 hours, not one instant of collective panic. At the front, roughly 6,000 Romans broke through the African and Iberian line. They kept climbing because fog still concealed the army behind them. They had escaped the battlefield below. They had not escaped Hannibal. Hannibal surrounded them on higher ground before their local victory could become an escape. The Romans surrendered after receiving a promise that their lives would be spared.
They agreed to our terms, General.
You had no authority to settle those terms.
Proceed along the road.
Italian allies were released without ransom.
We will go.
Roman citizens remained
Watch the
prisoners.
others. Keep searching.
Ancient
Move
sources
slowly.
report roughly
The fog is
15,000
clearing
Romans
slightly.
killed. This was no
Watch the
archaeological
horizon.
count.
Do not stop.
Polybius reports more than 15,000 captives.
Faster.
Other ancient
Move
totals
faster.
differ. Polybius gives 1,500 Carthaginian dead. Livy gives 2,500, plus later deaths. No reliable source isolates how many Roman dead were lost specifically to the lake. Polybius and Livy describe 4,000 cavalry sent ahead by Servilius under Centenius. Hannibal struck separately. Many died, and the remaining cavalry surrendered the next day. Appian gives 8,000, but Servilius and his consular army still remain. When news reached Rome, the dead consul made the defeat impossible to conceal. The crowd panicked. Rome answered by mobilizing defenses, not by opening negotiations. With one consul dead and the other absent, Rome used an exceptional appointment procedure.
Shadow Hannibal. Guard the strong points. Refuse the battle he chooses.
Victory destroyed a consular army and restored Hannibal's freedom across central Italy. Unlike Cannae, this ambush fragmented a marching column. Most Italian allies still stood with Rome. Rome saw a lakeside road. Hannibal saw an army already divided before battle began.